यहाँ नहीं यार, तो आना पड़ेगा उधर ही। मुझे पता तू अपने 4,000 के भेजेगी।
4,000 अरे मिल जाएगा आराम से बजाएं। बिल्कुल पूरा वाले में एक ही सेटअप है उनके पास कैमरा का, तो एक सेटअप हमें यहाँ से अरेंज करना पड़ेगा।
एक सेटअप कैमरा में
जैसे ये कैमरा सब है ना, कैमरा तो चाहिए ना।
मुझे वेब पर यह जानकारी मिली,
तो उनको मैं एक मेल डाल देता हूँ। एक जगह सेटअप NIC का होगा।
इनके पास ऐसा कैमरा नहीं है?
नहीं, एक ही।
तो 53 में 153 नीचे नहीं है?
हाँ, तो कैमरा तो चाहिए ना सर, उसके लिए कैमरा लगाते हैं ना। 100 वाली होगी ना,
ठीक है। नीचे वाले में NIC को बोलना पड़ेगा।
हाँ
ठीक।
तो
और उनको बोलेंगे स्ट्रॉन्ग रिजोल्यूशन में।
और टेस्टिंग के लिए भी जो है हमने WHO को बोल दिया, कल पड़ेगा। ठीक है,
दोनों जगह?
हाँ, दोनों जगह से।
ब्रिक्स वाला तो फाइल आ गया, मैंने देखा नहीं अभी।
हाँ,
तो दूसरा फाइल बात है कि जो WHO का जापान ने प्रपोज किया है,
हाँ,
अब समझ में नहीं आ रहा कि मतलब हमें तो आइडिया नहीं कि वो किस कॉन्टेक्स्ट में। या तो हम लोग डॉक्टर अभिनंदन से कमेंट ले लें उसमें,
रोड मैप वाला ना सर,
जो WHO का
रिफॉर्म
जापान वाला
रिफॉर्म
और US का भी आया है।
हाँ, USA का एक और आया हुआ है, अभी ये दूसरा।
वो तो WHO का रिस्पॉन्ड का पैंडेमिक रिस्पॉन्ड का था,
उसमें भी बहुत सारी चीज़ था उसमें भी।
इसको उसमें भी सारी चीज़ है।
तो ये कहाँ से आया है, ये इसका
कुछ है ही नहीं।
रेफरेंस क्या दें उसमें, कहाँ से आया?
तो ऐसा ही है, उस पर ये से साइन में देखो,
उसको लिखना पड़ेगा कहाँ से आया। ठीक है, उसका ऊपर देखेंगे।
पर एक बार इसका जापान वाला पूछना पड़ेगा।
जापान वाला तो पूरा कर रखे हैं, वो जो कमेंट जो बनाया था डेलीगेशन में चला गया। डेलीगेशन
कमेंट अब जाना है। हम लोग एक वीक से आया, कौन सा था?
MBS
आया था ना, उनसे नहीं आता, रसिया वाले से नहीं आया। वो मांग रहा है कि हम लोग MBA को लेते हैं, आपको कैसे
3 एजेंडा पर अभी आ गया है पॉइंट, लेकिन इंटरवेंशन नहीं है।
अपने ही फीस अपने ही बना है।
हाँ, भेज दिया।
आज फिर दूसरा आप बोल रहे थे कि आप चाहे तो कुछ और बढ़ा सकते, मेरा बस का बनाया था। यही
तो इनका कोई
मैंने तो उसको बोला, विमर्श ने बोला, मैंने कहा यार अब क्लोज मैटर हो गया, 4 दिन तक नहीं हो सकता ना। तो उसने भी कहा था रिटर्न में आप दे दीजिए, फिर 4-5 डिसाइड किए वही आज आया था कि कई लोग मांग करें 10 कर दीजिए, तो उस पर भी सुनवाई हो रहा है। उनका हम लोग का फाइनल हो गया, हम लोग चेंज नहीं रिटर्न करें तो गड़बड़ करें, रिकॉर्ड में जाए।
response.
सर नहीं बैठे
We're then going to move to the ACT Accelerator and hear from Dr. Bruce Aylward, and then on to the COVID-19 Technology Access Tool, the CTAP, and the Solidarity Call for Action, and that will be presented by Dr. Mariangela Samau or her colleague Dr. Gilles Forte. And then of course there'll be time for your comments and questions and answers from colleagues. So with that, I will pass to Fabia Longquist, who is moderating today's Member State information session. Fabia, over to you for you to bring in the Director General, please.
Thank you very much, Madam Chair, and we would now like to pass the floor to Dr. Tedros, Director General. Thank you. You have the floor.
Thank you. Can you hear me clearly?
I confirm that we can indeed hear you. Thank you, Deidre.
Excellencies, esteemed colleagues, thank you for joining for this week's Member State briefing. As you know, I have been identified as a contact of someone who has tested positive for COVID-19. As you can see, I'm addressing you from my home today. I'm well and without symptoms, but I'm self-quarantining in line with WHO protocols. At this time, it's critically important that we all comply with health guidance. This is how we will break chains of transmission, suppress the virus, and protect health systems. Our first presentation today will be an update from Dr. Anders Nostrom, as Jane said, the head of the Secretariat for the Independent Panel for Pandemic Preparedness and Response, the IPPR. As you will see, things are moving forward quickly. The independent panel has submitted a progress report to WHO, which should now be available. And next week on Tuesday, the co-chairs will brief the World Health Assembly on its progress. Next, we will hear an update on the Access to COVID-19 Tools Accelerator. Earlier this week, the ACT Accelerator Facilitation Council had its second meeting, in which it discussed the big political decisions the world needs to take to turn the tide on this pandemic. The Council deliberated on concrete ways that we can close the ACT Accelerator financial gap and ensure equitable access to emerging COVID tools. Following the Assembly, I will be inviting the Council co-chairs, ministers from Norway and South Africa to brief Member States on the outcomes of the Facilitation Council in a special session. Today, we will be giving you a preview of a new document that we have developed with the ACT Accelerator partners agencies, in which we present the sharpened priorities, financing needs, and investment case. It will be published in the coming days. Dr. Bruce Aylward will take you through the main content of this new publication, which makes an even stronger case for the ACT Accelerator at the exit strategy for the pandemic. Finally, we will hear from Assistant Director General Mariangela Simao, who will update you on the work of the COVID-19 Technology Access Pool Secretariat. CTAP is working to accelerate the scale-up of manufacturing and the removal of barriers to access through the pooling and voluntary sharing of knowledge, intellectual property and data in line with WHO Resolution 73.1. DG Simao, who heads the Secretariat, will explain how CTAP is being structured and how it's operating. She will also discuss the mechanism for consultation with Member States and other key stakeholders. Thank you all once again for your continued support and commitment. We look forward to your questions. I thank you.
Thank you very much, Dr. Tedros. And now we will look to bring in our first guest speaker, Dr. Anders Nordstrom. Again, Fabio, back to you to bring Dr. Nordstrom into the discussion. Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And Dr. Nordstrom, you have the floor. I confirm you can. Thank you so much.
Co-chairs, President Saeed and Prime Minister Helen Clark, who can't be with you today, but will be with you on Tuesday. As the Director General said, we are making good progress with the independent panel. There is a report submitted to the World Health Assembly reporting on the initial work that the panel has been conducting now. There have been 2 panel meetings held, one in September and one now in October. The reports from those panel meetings are posted on the website of the panel, as well as also now the agreed program of work for the panel that will provide everybody with a transparent and hopefully informative insights in terms of where the panel is today. I would like to iterate that this program of work is a living document, as the work of the panel will evolve over time, but also as we are right in the middle of the pandemic right now, some of those questions and some of the focus of the panel might shift over time. On Tuesday, our 2 co-chairs will provide you with a more detailed update, so I will not preempt that right now. But I can say at the second panel meeting, which was then more of a substantive panel meeting, the first panel meeting was more to get organized and agree on the program of work. But at the second panel meeting, how they will start and how we are already now doing work on understanding the present situation. What happened? What is happening right now? The chronology, what happened during the first months, understanding the epidemiology, but also understanding how recommendations were made, on what basis, and then also understanding national response. How did countries respond and what impact could we see from this? So that is quite a big part of the work of the panel right now. They are now organizing both desk reviews to access national and international documents and WHO documentation, but also scheduling interviews now with different key informatives. The second part of what the panel discussed was more about WHO, the international system. The resolution is very clear that the panel is expected to review what modalities WHO had at hand, and also WHO's role within the UN system. So the panel discussed that, and doing that also talking about what is really WHO's role and mandate when it comes to pandemic preparedness and response. Is it the right one? Has WHO got the right authority? Has WHO got the right capacity? And has WHO got the right financing? So that was the beginning of that conversation that will continue with the panel. No conclusions yet, of course, but they are embarking with the same kind of methodologies here in terms of reaching out, trying to get inputs, suggestions, and then interviewing people. The panel is working both at the co-chair level, but also at the secretariat level, very closely with the Independent Oversight and Advisory Committee. You will also have a report from them, I understand now, for the Assembly, and also with the review committee of the IHR. We had a very good joint co-chairs discussion on video just 2 days ago, where we are trying to synchronize and share as much information as we can. But as those 2 other bodies, they have quite distinct tasks, and we are as independent panels trying to avoid duplicating what they are doing, and instead benefiting from that. But there is a clear line of communication there. Let me finally say also then on the behalf of the panel that we are grateful for inputs and contributions and suggestions that we have received already. We have our web page up and running where we have an open invitation now to member states to make contributions, to come with suggestions to us, things that we think the panel should think about, things that the panel should focus on, and even potential recommendations for the panel when they get at that stage. We are appreciative of what we already got, but we welcome more. And we have also very much appreciated the possibilities also to have individual briefings with you. Our door, especially from the Secretariat, is of course always open to provide an opportunity to listen, but also to answer questions. More will follow now on Tuesday from the co-chairs, so I end and say
to Dr. Anders Nordstrom, and our next speaker turning to the ACT Accelerator. Fabio, over to you to bring in Dr. Elwood. Thank you once again, and we are pleased to give the floor to Dr. Elwood. Over to you. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Fabia, and thank you very much, Jane. If I could have the first slide, please. So, honourable ministers, delegates, over the next 10 minutes or so, I will walk you through I'm seeing a gesture here to suggest we're not going to have our slides. Do I need to project, Fabia, or are you able to do from there?
Thank you, Dr. Elwood. We're just double-checking with the team this end to confirm that we can bring your slides up onto the screen. Alternatively, we may ask you to share your screen. Please just give us one moment. Thank you. And I confirm that we have your slides. Wonderful. Please proceed. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Fabia, and thank you, ministers and colleagues for the patience. So what I would like to do over the next 10 minutes is to provide our member states an update on the ACT Accelerator, where we are at a midpoint in the scale-up phase that we've been discussing with you for the past couple of months. I'll provide you a bit of a context for the work that we're doing right now, as well as the outcomes of quite a deep look by each of the pillars of the ACT Accelerator into their work, into the evolving outbreak, into the evolving information we have about potential COVID tools, and how that is affecting our priorities and financing needs as we go forward. As the Director General mentioned, this information was presented to our Facilitation Council earlier this week, and it will be finalized in a document that will be shared with member states either by the end of this week or early next week. If I might have the next slide, please. With this first slide, I want to just remind us of the two overriding objectives of the ACT Accelerator, which of course is to accelerate the development of new diagnostics, treatments, and vaccines, but as importantly, to ensure the equitable global access to all COVID-19 tools moving forward. And in the meetings of the Facilitation Council and the work of the pillars, of course, equal attention is given to both of these objectives. So have the next slide, please. I wanted to remind us of the context in which the Facilitation Council was meeting this week and of the work that we are doing in terms of sharpening the priorities and financing requirements of the ACT Accelerator. As you can see through this graphic, and most of you are well aware, of course, 10 months into the pandemic, over 46 million people have already been infected, and over 1 million people have already died. In addition to this, as you can see in the graphic, the Northern Hemisphere, of course, is entering this flu season, already suffering a second wave of COVID-19. I thought it important to share this information at the beginning of this presentation on the ACT Accelerator, because it's a reminder of just the urgency of the work that is being done across the pillars and the urgency of ensuring we move forward with the equitable access agenda because of the tremendous, not just economic, societal toll, but the very real human toll of this disease. We move to the next slide, please. With this slide, can we just move forward, please? What I wanted again to remind you, just in terms of context, that it was only 2 months ago, even less than 2 months ago, that the ACT Accelerator moved into what we call the scale-up phase. And at that time, we published the status report and plan for the scale-up phase, as well as the investment case, the extraordinary economic rationale behind investing in the ACT Accelerator. And I think one of the most striking things about our current work is just it reflects how quickly things are moving and evolving in terms of the fantastic progress in developing new tools against COVID, but also the challenges we're facing in terms of ensuring their equitable access in the face of an escalating global epidemic and crisis. We move to the next slide. I wanted to highlight for you that in the scale-up phase, just 2 months into it. The pillars, and really so much of the credit here goes to the leadership and the teams in our partner agencies, Gavi, SETI, UNITAID, FIND, the Global Fund, the World Bank, Welcome, Gates Foundation. All of these agencies working together have really advanced the agendas. One of the most striking areas, we talked about this earlier this month, has been now the demonstration that at least 2, and probably more very soon, rapid antigen tests have now been proven to be of high sensitivity specificity, through great work by FIND and others, approved through WHO very rapidly through the EUL process, and now made available to low-income, low-middle-income countries through a tremendous volume and price guarantee, which will run over the next 6 months, and you see noted here. As importantly, during this period, the first life-saving therapy, you're aware now, is in rollout, dexamethasone. The policy guidance is out there for countries. There are emergency stocks for those who may not have it in stock. At the same time, with the work now on monoclonal antibodies showing some promise, at least for early disease, moderate disease, we're looking at ensuring that this product is available not just in high-income countries, if it actually works, but also low-income countries. So there's a whole agenda of work around that. And then, of course, the striking success of the COVAX facility, the work now to put in place a mechanism to ensure that over 186 countries and economies, representing more than 90% of the world's population, can actually work together on the procurement, the rollout of new vaccines, if and when they're proven to be effective. And then finally, of course, one of the important developments, the equitable allocation framework, COVAX allocation mechanism, have moved from design to actually really structures that will take forward this agenda. So if we move to the next slide, given that good news, why are we looking now at a sharpening of our priorities and updating of our funding needs just 2 months into the scale-up phase? Well, it's because of the 4 major trends that you see represented on this slide, and a little bit that I've alluded to already. First, we gained a much deeper understanding of the evolving, what we call product portfolio. We have a much better sense of what's going to happen in the area of diagnostics, what's going to happen in the area of therapeutics and in vaccines. All of that allows us to refine our priorities and sharpen also our funding needs. In the next couple of months, we will see some very important, what we call readouts or results on various products. Vaccines, everyone knows about, but also monoclonal antibodies and some diagnostic tests and other tools, which could have a substantial impact on the end of the pandemic. And we need to make sure, as the ACT Accelerator, we're set up to take full advantage of those readouts in real time, which means, again, sharpening our priorities. On the bottom left, you can see one of the more concerning reasons, though, that we met early and developed this new document. You'll see at the end of this week. And that's because the equitable access promise, which is so important to this work we're doing, is increasingly threatened by the lack of financing, which I've referred to, but also by the in-country capacities to take full advantage of COVID tools. Increasingly, we're seeing in countries with weak health systems that they're not able to generate the demand for tools. So stocks of PPE, for example, oxygen, are not being fully utilized and drawn on from the global level, nor are they being distributed as rapidly and effectively as they might be to save lives, reduce disease, keep systems safe in countries. And finally, there's new evidence, and this is from the International Monetary Fund, that multilateralism, working together as a global community, can really accelerate and is essential to accelerating global recovery. At the bottom of this slide, you see a schematic. These are not real data aside from the left-hand side. It's just a projection on the right-hand side of what could happen going forward. Very clearly, what we're currently coming to understand about this disease is it is not going to go away easily. COVID is here to stay, certainly for the near and medium term. And even in an optimistic scenario, we may only be able to bring the disease down to lower levels of transmission, but still have to live and work with it. What will want to ensure, by addressing the problems we've talked about, is that we move from a pessimistic scenario over the next months and years to an optimistic scenario, even greater control than represented here. With the next slide, and this is why these next few months are absolutely crucial. So here's the good news. Remember, there's two big objectives, the new tools that we talked about, their rapid development. But then the second part of it is the rollout. And I'm going to show you two different slides here. First, the good news. And that is that the ACT Accelerator is already saving lives with the tools that I've been talking about. And it is working hard to accelerate other game-changing products over the coming months. The schematic you see on the left-hand side just illustrates that we are looking at tools across the spectrum from prevention, protection, and treatment, as well as testing against COVID. And I wanted to show you that schematic because if we click again, I'll show how this will evolve over time. With the next click of this slide, what you will see here now is 3 arrows that represent where we were before Act A in terms of the tools that were available. As you can see, almost empty shelf. We had very few tools, relying very heavily on non-pharmaceutical interventions. By November, where we are today, you can see that already as a result of the work of the ACT Accelerator, industry, the many governments and others we are working with, we're in a different situation with new tools in the form of rapid diagnostic tests, RDTs, and dexamethasone, as well as the existing tools at greater volumes. If you look forward to March on the right-hand side of the slide, you can see a very different situation, which we believe is a very possible situation for us to be in globally, with many more tools, including vaccines and possibly monoclonal antibodies, but operating right across the spectrum of intervention points you saw on the left. And with that armamentarium rolled out at a global level that you see on the March scenario on the right, we could fundamentally change the nature of this pandemic in the near term. But the next slide shows us the challenge to achieving that. While we're making progress in terms of the tools themselves, access to these critical tools already differs widely, as you're aware, across countries, and this could worsen without urgent financial and political action. And this is the reason for the new document we will be issuing this week, is to outline some of these challenges and what can be done about them. If you look on this graphic, what you're seeing for each of the 4 intervention points I talked about, prevention, protection, testing, and treatment, you can see for high-income countries in the upper set of boxes and for low-income countries and economies in the lower boxes, that the situation in terms of the access to these tools is very different. Part, this is financial, part because it's political choice about the sharing of tools, and then thirdly, it is because of weak systems in many low-income countries, unable to fully exploit them. And this is what we are working to address. The next slide, is this is how we are hoping to change the fundamental, or planning to change the fundamental dynamic of the pandemic by March. In the area of diagnostics, therapeutics, vaccines, and health systems connector, we are in a position very soon as a global community to substantially expand testing globally, to improve the availability of at least dexamethasone and oxygen to save countless lives, and then to be fully ready for vaccination. As importantly, there's been great work in the health systems connector area over the last couple of weeks to really rethink how they can ensure the rollout of these tools through rapid assessments, integrated delivery plans, large-scale use of PPE, and key system investments. So great progress made in that area. But if we move to the next slide, you will see, basically we just pop forward. So the goal is to achieve these let's say, changes in each of these 4 areas by March. But just pop forward, are we stuck with our slides? The next slide, I wanted to give you a sense, thank you very much, of the challenges to getting there. In addition to the ones I talked about, system capacities and political choice, we have the issue of financing. There's been great progress in terms of bringing down some of the costs associated with the ACT Accelerator, as well as pledges to it. But as you can see here, we still have an urgent financing gap of $4.5 billion for near-term activities, depending on the pillar, will run to the end of this year or early next year, as well as then the $24 billion gap you see on the left-hand side, which represents the amount of funding needed really to scale up and procure all of these products as they come online. You can see the breakdown with the little table on the right-hand side of what that looks like for each of the pillars. I should have mentioned in the graphic on the left, what you see in the first column is the overall cost of the ACT Accelerator, $38 billion we released months ago. Then you can see some of the reductions due to cost adjustments, pledges, OMAC self-financing, etc. Then you have the urgent financing gap. Now this is substantial money, but if you move to the next slide, I wanted to put this in context with a report from the International Monetary Fund, which came out in October, that said if medical solutions can be made available faster and more widely, this could increase global income by almost $9 trillion by the end of 2025, and that this increase would accrue in all countries, low, middle, upper, and high-income countries. And so on the right-hand side, as we try to translate that into a very simple message, it's addressing the ACT Accelerator's urgent financing needs would equal only 1 day of that income and save countless lives. Now, my second to last slide, I just wanted to remind you that as the Director General said, on the 2nd of November, Tuesday, the ACT Accelerator Facilitation Council discussed these evolving priorities and urgent financing needs. I've provided the program summary there you'll have when we share the slides, as well as some of the I thought important quotes you might think were relevant when during the course of the deliberations. You see those on the right-hand side. But as the Director General mentioned, the co-chairs will finalize a summary note on their deliberations and share that with all of you, our member states, in the coming 10 days or so, right after the Assembly. With the next and final slide, just to give you a sense of where we'll go in terms of our next steps with these documents and the work, we'll be incorporating final comments from the Council and from our pillars and partners, and into the ACT A urgent priorities and financing gaps as of 9 November. And you see the cover of the document there on the right-hand side, and we will look to issue that either by tomorrow evening or possibly Monday. Then working with the ACT A Facilitation Council co-chairs, get their summary and next steps finalized and out to you, our member states, as soon as possible. And then continue our work through the ACT Accelerator advocacy campaign to mobilize the financing needed with 2 upcoming events. People are aware of course, the Paris Peace Forum and President Macron's showcasing of the ACT Accelerator there between 11 and 13 November. Then, of course, the G20 Leaders Summit, which comes at the end of November. So with that, thank you for your attention, and I hope this has provided the necessary information on where we stand with respect to our new, sharper priorities as we move forward, as well as the financing required to get there. We do believe, as I mentioned, there can be a fundamental change in the nature of this pandemic by March of next year. If that financing is in place, political commitment continues, and we're able to address some of the system issues we mentioned. But there's a solid plan of work in place for that. What's not in place is the financing to achieve it. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Dr. Bruce Aylward, who of course is staying with us to take any questions or comments member states might have when we get to Q&A. And now I turn to the last of our presentations. Dr. Marianne Samau is actually joining the session a little bit later. She's in another important meeting at present, and I'm delighted to say her colleague, Dr. Gilles Forte, will be taking us through this next presentation. Dr. Forte, the floor is yours.
Thank you, and Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, colleagues. I will give you now a quick update on where we are with the CTAP, the COVID-19 Technology Access Pool. As you all know, the pool was officially launched on the 29th of May by President of Costa Rica, Carlos Alvarado, and with also Dr. Tedros, WHO Director General. And they both call for solidarity and to call upon member states to join this initiative in order to realize equitable global access to COVID-19 health technologies, particularly through pooling of knowledge, intellectual property and data. So far, there are about 40 member states who have joined the solidarity call to action, and there are more to come. So we are having almost day-to-day contact and discussion with more member states that would like to join this call. In addition to member states, the CTAP is supported by a number of international organizations like UNITED, UNESCO, UNAIDS, UNDP, and the Commission for Human Rights. Civil society also is a strong supporter of CTAP. CTAP is organized like a hub, like a platform which engages a number of implementing partners that are already operating in addressing barriers to technologies for COVID-19. The first one is the Technology Access Partnership, which is supported by the UN Technology Bank and UNDP, and the specific role of the Technology Access Partnership is to promote technology transfer and local production, for example, of personal protective equipment, medical devices, such as ventilators and other oxygen-related technologies and diagnostics. Another important partner for CTAP, implementing partner, is the Medicines Patent Pool, which has a vast experience in public health-driven licensing of products. And in March 2020, the patent pool expanded its mandate to include any health technology that would contribute to the global response to COVID-19. The Open COVID Pledge is also a very strong partner in CTAP, and particularly as it offers a repository for soft and hard technologies relevant to COVID-19, which is a mechanism whereby companies make available a non-exclusive, royalty-free, time-limited worldwide license. Another important partner to CTAP is the Global Initiative on Sharing All Influenza Data, which enables the unprecedented sharing of genomic and associated data from cases of COVID-19. Within WHO, the WHO Global Observatory on Health Research and Development is also an important contributor to CTAP. And all these partners that we have identified so far are coordinated by the WHO CTAP Secretariat, which is hosted in WHO headquarters, which is a platform which acts as a hub and that coordinates the involvement of all these implementing partners, but also connects to other data sharing platforms and databases where COVID-19 related health technology information is already available. So if we look at the CTAP overall objectives, the objective of CTAP are to promote open science in order to accelerate product development by pooling intellectual property, data and manufacturing processes and other kinds of know-how. The second important objective is to facilitate more affordable access to new tools through non-exclusive and public health-driven licensing, accompanied by enhanced arrangements for technology transfer in countries, in particular low and middle income countries. So basically, Act A that we've heard about just before and CTAP are complementary initiatives in this respect. So all these principles, like the rationale of CTAP, the objectives, the complementarity with Act A, the governance structure, the consultation process that are planned, but also the ones that are ongoing, is captured in a CTAP concept paper that is now available on the WHO website, and this concept paper has already been shared with a number of member states and partners who are interested to join this initiative. In terms of the governance, the steering committee has been established and comprises UN organizations and implementing partners And regular meetings are taking place for the steering committee, which mandate is to plan, steer the work of CETAP, but also to monitor progress that are being made by CETAP. A technical advisory group is being established following WHO recruitment procedure for experts, and which role will be to contribute to the prioritization of the CETAP candidate health product, but also to identify the level of information and the type of information that will be required by the contributor to CETAP, and information that will be shared in the various databases. The WHO CETAP Secretariat is within WHO and is a partnership between the Access to Medicines and Health Product Division and the Science Division. A number of consultations have been taking place with member states, and some of those consultations with member states are led by Costa Rica, which is a co-sponsor of CETAP, but also a consultation have been taking place also with other stakeholders like the civil society, and more are going to come before the end of the year. So it has been very important for us to inform regularly all our partners, member states, and be transparent on the progress made by CETAP, and we will continue to do that in the coming months. Core to the CETAP principle is the engagement with the private sector. The private sector, throughout our exchanges and engagement, recognize the value of collaboration to address COVID-19, and concrete commitments are needed by the private sector in terms of sharing knowledge, IP, and data. The private sector engagement strategy that we have developed is meant to explore incentives to overcome reliance on confidentiality as a competitive advantage of CETAP. And also within this strategy, the strategy is based on a strong engagement with private sector, particularly for the prioritized needs in different areas of health products that are important for addressing COVID-19. Further discussions with member states and funders of research and development are planned. A number of those discussions are taking place at the moment with member states, but indeed more of them will be done in the coming weeks and months to discuss the potential incentives to engage the private sector. And for that, as I said, we are holding information sessions, but also having interactions with member states and funders of research and development through bilateral meetings. We also plan to have a consultation with the industry and with the civil society organizations before the end of this year. So WHO is establishing a WHO-hosted and led COVID-19 technology access pool in order to compile in one place pledges of commitment made under the Solidarity Call to Action, and to voluntarily share COVID-19 health technology related knowledge, intellectual property and data for existing or new therapeutics, diagnostics and vaccines to be used for technology transfer and enhanced production of health products in need for COVID-19. CETAP objectives will only be achieved with member states' active engagement. Costa Rica has been from the beginning a very critical player in mobilizing member states to join CETAP, and Costa Rica is organizing regular meetings with other co-sponsor member states and interested countries to discuss about how government could identify and implement national incentives in order to motivate the private sector in their respective countries to join CETAP. Incentives could come in the form of regulatory fast tracks, price and reimbursement, tax credits or deduction, importation facilitation and or duty reduction, extended exclusivity and cash. Finally, and in conclusion, sharing data and information, which is normally kept secret or protected by intellectual property, could materially advance the speed at which technologies are developed and avoid, for example, the repetition and duplication of research carried out by others, and reducing transaction costs in negotiations. CTAP represents mid-term and long-term a more sustainable solution to promote access to innovation in health technologies. Time is now. We need to promote the sharing of knowledge and IP licensing now to shorten the time for safe, efficacious and affordable new technologies to get into the market of all countries and for all people who need them. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you so much to my colleague Dr. Gilles Fortet for that presentation. And now we reach the section of the agenda to hand over to Member States for comments, questions, etc. And I will hand back to Fabia Lundquist to moderate this section of our meeting today. Thank you very much, Madam Chair, and thank you to all of our presenters today. And as mentioned, we'll now move into the question and answer component of the session. With that being said, we would like to remind all that we do also have the services of interpretation today in the 6 official languages of the United Nations. Thank you very much. A friendly reminder that those wishing to take the floor may do so by raising their hand in the Zoom platform. I'm sure you're all familiar with that by now. And we don't currently see any hands up, but with your agreement, Madam Chair, perhaps we'll just give it a moment to see whether any hands do go up. Thank you. And I wish to recognise a question from Canada. Nilu, you have the floor. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Fabian. Good morning to all, and thank you very much to all the presenters for those very helpful presentations. Just in terms of the CTAP initiative, I would like to ask, given the breadth of the governance structure that is being envisioned, including the steering committee, the technical advisory group, etc., is there a timeline envisioned as to when these will be done and operationalized and communicated?
Thank you very much, Canada, for this question on the CTAP governance structure and timelines. I shall perhaps hand over to our colleague from the CTAP initiative, who will be best placed to respond to this question from Canada. Thank you, Dr. Fortet. Over to you.
Thank you for the question from the delegate from Canada. The steering committee is already operational. The first meeting was held in August, and we are having a meeting almost every 3 weeks with the partners that I mentioned, like UNAID, UNITED, and other implementing partners that are contributing to CTAP. The technical advisory group is being established at the moment, and we are issuing a call for experts to join this the technical advisory group. But in the meantime, we are working with a number of experts in those respective fields, like the field of incentives and engagement with private sector and IP and other topics like that. So in the meantime, waiting on that the technical advisory group is fully operational. We have started working, and in terms of the implementation of the work, actually because the implementing partner and the WHO Secretary are already working on issues related to addressing IP issues with respect to medicines and health products, I think they are already concrete initiatives that are taking place as I talk, through, for example, the TAP, the Technology Access Partnership, for example, which is specifically involved in the pool, obviously, and we as a WHO Secretariat as well. So while those governance mechanisms are being put in place, work is already ongoing, and as I said, for example, the steering committee and many consultation processes that I mentioned are ongoing and are taking place at the moment. Over.
Thank you very much for this response to the question from Canada. I'm also pleased to inform you that we've been joined by Dr. Mariangela Simao. With that, we shall turn back to you, to our member states, to see whether there would be any further questions or comments at this stage. And a reminder just to raise your hand in the Zoom platform. Thank you. I wish to recognise the United Kingdom, to be followed by Bangladesh. Mr. Andrews, you have the floor.
Thank you. Can you hear me?
I confirm we can hear you and see you. Thank you.
Thank you. Great. I just wanted to comment really. I wanted to say thanks very much for these updates. I think the proactive nature of the briefing is really welcome from our point of view. And these are three very important areas, IPPR, Act Accelerator and CTAP from our point of view as well. So thanks. And the other thing I wanted to mention was to thank you for sharing the terms of reference for the Origins investigation, which was circulated now to before this meeting, I think. It's understanding as best we all can the origins of COVID-19 is essential to preventing future pandemics, and that is a real priority for the UK for that reason. Given that they're only shared this morning and it's not on the formal agenda, I won't comment on the substance of those, but I just wondered if it would be possible to say when we're likely to get an update on that and a chance for a discussion between the member states. Thank you.
Thank you very much, and we shall now give the floor to Bangladesh.
Have a good afternoon. Can you hear me?
Good afternoon, we can hear you. Thank you.
Thank you very much. First, I would like to convey my thanks to all the presenters who presented today. My questions is related with the CTAP initiative. What I understood today, the main objective of CTAP is to avoid the reputation and replication of research carried out by others and reducing transaction costs in negotiation. In that case, I have a few couple of points. When and how will they start collecting data and IP-related data? And in this regard, how member states will be able to get the shared data, and is there any financial issues are associated if the member state would like to get those kind of data to implement nationally to avoid their transaction costs? And the last point is, what would be the role of co-sponsor countries and how they get benefit from this CTAP initiative, if kindly clarified. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Bangladesh, for these questions. I shall now give the floor to the Russian Federation. Mr. Selakov, you have the floor.
Thank you. Fabio, do you hear me?
I confirm we can hear you, and also to remind you that we do have the services of interpretation should you wish to utilize those. Thank you.
Благодарим за организацию данной сессии.
Thank you. I want to thank the region for having organized this meeting, and I want to thank all the presenters. And we got a lot of information from these presentations, especially as regards the current situation and the multiple measures that have been taken to face the situation. Regarding what Bruce said, we learned a great deal regarding the progress made, which are enormous. Now, there were different estimates, both positive and less positive, for January. And I had the following question to ask. Would it be reasonable to think that in January we would be able to roll out the first vaccine purchases? And another question. Since in order to carry out purchases, we need to have gone through second and third trial phases, and all this needs to go through the proper channels. There are many things to do, and I wonder how many vaccines have been presented today to the official for verification so they can be included in the official list, or at the very least, how many vaccines are in the COVAX file for the beginning of purchases in January. Thank you.
Thank you very much to the Russian Federation for this question. As I can see no further hands up at this stage, I shall hand back to Madam Chair to kindly help us in pulling in our respective colleagues to respond to the questions from the United Kingdom, namely on the Origins CTAP initiative, and to the question just now from the Russian Federation regarding vaccines and timelines. Madam Chair, over to you.
Thank you very much, Fabio. I think first of all I'll ask ABG Dr. Angela Simao to take the questions in her area, and then I think I would look to turn to Dr. Maria Van Kerkhove to comment. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Then I couldn't leave before it ended, so thank you very much also for you for taking my place. And the questions from Bangladesh, thank you very much, because it's a very practical question in terms of how can you access the data that you need. And the beauty of this CTAP, what we're working right now, is that it's a platform that's congregated different databases. Now it's bringing together one place where you can access the information you need. For example, we do have the medicines patent, who already has a database on patents, which is called MedPAC. WHO has databases, the landscape of vaccines candidates on the R&D blueprint, so they're on the Global Health Observatory. So there's a lot of information, and we have GIS8, for example, who does the genomic sequencing. The database is in GIS8, but will be linked to the CTAP platforms as well. So it will depend a lot on how, what type of information country needs, and we are always ready to have bilateral conversations to address specific needs or specific requests for information. Regarding, if I understood correctly, the question on the vaccines from Russia, and I'll start and maybe Bruce can complement. It's related to what's on the portfolio right now and what do we expect for next year, right? So I'm going to speak a little bit. First, what do we expect from overall on the vaccine development, the pipeline? You know that we have close to 200 vaccine candidates being studied, 154 are still in preclinical trials, it's before the human phase trials, and we have 44 in clinical trials already in humans, right? And out of these 10 are on phase 3, which is the last. But after phase 3 ends, and this is something that WHO has issued recently, an expression of interest for manufacturers who are on phase 2B and phase 3 to be either a part of an emergency use listing or pre-qualified. Out of these 10 candidates in phase 3, we expect that some of them will have readouts before the end of the year. And this means what? It means that you finalize phase 3, but then still there's all the process to get a license, right? Either by a national authority or a pre-qualified or emergency use listing by WHO. So we expect that finalizing phase 3, you still have 2 or 3 months before these vaccines actually come to the market. I'll refer to Bruce to talk specifically about the vaccines in the COVAX facility. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Very soon to have an echo. Jane, if I might continue?
Yeah, please do, Bruce.
So to add to Mariangela's answer with respect to the questions asked by our Russian delegate, Mr. Edward, which is so important. So where do we expect to be by January is really the key question. Now, first to remember, as Mariangela said, there's 3 pieces of information which will be absolutely vital on each vaccine: the efficacy, the safety, and the quality data. When we talk about the information that will be available by the possibly before Christmas, late November, even early December, depending on the company, most of that is what we call the efficacy data, that first piece of data. And very often it's only what we call interim data. So we need to be very clear that may not be the final data from trials. So we are still, and the other thing I would remind the honorable delegates that very few companies, if any, have actually hit the target dates that they have set. They've often been delayed. So by the time we get to January, we may have, in some countries, products that have received a licensure. They may be in rollout in those countries. It is unlikely that by January, quality data, as well as the quantity of products, is in place, has been fully reviewed by competent regulatory authorities and WHO's extensive PQ process. More likely, it will be later in the first quarter of 2021. So for planning purposes, we should be thinking later in terms of the first quarter of 2021 for the rollout of these products. We all wanted to move faster. We're doing everything possible on all sites, from regulators to governments to manufacturers. But our planning is a little bit later into the beginning of 2021. So we are doing everything possible to have country readiness in place for January if things were to be accelerated. In terms of the number of products that are in the COVAX file, 9 products that we are actually sponsoring and supporting a very dynamic portfolio. In addition to that, we are in discussions with 7 or 8 additional manufacturers about procurement of their products if they prove successful in trials. We anticipate that deals, the first wave of deals, will be fully completed by December at the latest, and that at the beginning of next year we would have somewhere between half a dozen and more products that were actually in the procurement file, as Russia was asking about, and that will be further expanded in early 2021 will be the goal. Now again, part of that is going to depend on the progress of those products, the 10 products that Mariangela referred to through their phase 3 trials, but also the generation of the appropriate safety and quality data. And finally, of course, will be the issue of the quantities. So there's very positive progress. This is moving faster than it ever has for any vaccine in history. And at the same time, it's moving with great attention to ensuring safety and quality of these products. But at the same time, as we've talked about repeatedly, there are certain inherent timelines that are crucial to ensuring that our member states, will have access to efficacious, safe, and assured quality products, and that is our goal.
Can I just compliment, because this is a very important topic, because a lot of the trust on whatever vaccine comes out will depend on how rigorous we are with the trials and how rigorous are the regulatory authorities when licensing a product. So it's absolutely essential that the international standards on clinical trials and the WHO's target product profile are observed in finalizing the trials and in the licensing period. WHO, besides on the emergency use listing, has also published for consultation the criteria for the assessment, the regulatory assessment of vaccines. We received, I think, 84 pages of comments, and we are able to finalize this and to put this out so that the manufacturers can understand what's being asked of them. On the emergency use listing, we were already contacted by 8 manufacturers. Not all of them were on phase 2B or phase 3, so there's still a process of what we're calling, once the submission is accepted, there's a rolling submission that we will be assessing data as it comes in. But this is just to say that we expect that the vaccines will come into the market after a very rigorous process of assessing the quality of the data provided on the clinical trials and the good manufacturing practice. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much to Dr. Simal and to Dr. Elwood for the responses to these questions. In regards to the question posed by the United Kingdom on the origins of TORs, I understand that Dr. Tedros, Director General, would wish to respond to this question. As you know, as he mentioned earlier, he's currently self-isolating from home, so we'll do our best to bring him in now, and thank you very much, Dr. Tedros, for this. You have the floor.
Can you hear me?
We can, and we can see you. Thank you.
Thank you. Yeah, thank you very much. So, as our UK representative said, we have shared the terms of reference with all member states today. And at the same time, the expert group met actually last Friday, and they have started their deliberations. As you know, the expert groups are selected from different countries, institutions, and they are experts in the study of the origins of the virus. And also it's a cooperation between WHO, FAO and OIE. So we can have, as requested by UK, we can have a briefing in the member state session 2 weeks from today, because next week we will have, as you know, our assembly, so we can have a briefing on November 19th. We can do that. So if there is any additional information my colleagues would like to give, I think I have Peter and Maria in the room. Please feel free to give more information. Thank you.
Thank you very much for this, Dr. Tedros. We understand Dr. Nambarak would wish to come in at this point, so we would give you the floor. Thank you.
Thank you. Just to add that the first meeting was held, as you heard, last Friday. And the first meeting was an occasion to get detailed updates of all the work that has been done so far in China in the area of looking for a better understanding of the virus origin. So a lot of data, a lot of information was provided and have been digested by all the members of the international team as well. And in the coming weeks we are going to continue to have these regular meetings and advance our understanding of what has been done, what needs to be done, and move forward with a number of new studies. Thank you.
Thank you very much. As I don't see any further hands up at this stage. I shall hand back to Madam Chair. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Fabio. Thank you to colleagues. Thank you, DG. As you reminded us all, there is no briefings, no information session next week because we have the assumed World Health Assembly to be held virtually. But we will get that on the agenda, the issue of the mission for a future meeting. So thank you for that. And I think, Fabio, one last look at you to confirm that there's no further... No, thank you. Thank you very much to Member States. Thank you to Dr. Vardhan, our Executive Board Chair, and other ministers and excellencies who are online. Thank you for all those questions and comments, and we will virtually see and speak to many of you during the Assembly. Thank you to my colleagues, and that closes the session. Thank you.